interview is on CBC Main Street and took place in January of 2007. It's between Matt Rainey, the host, and myself, Beth Jansen, and it's about The Enchanted House, which came out in 2006 from Acorn Press.
Beth Jansen grew up in the States and in Guelph, Ontario. She's lived in Vancouver, Montreal, and Europe, but now the writer and teacher calls PEI home. It's here where she completed and published her first full-length collection of poems called The Enchanted House. And from that book, here is Beth Jansen reading one of the pieces.
Persephone, birthday. This woman was big. Linebacker shadow barging over the wall. Firelight, her upper lip coarse with boar's hair, blotched with sweat. I already knew daylight's for the bold. I'll take this dark sack, this salt, this wet. My mother ate popcorn and hummed ABBA tunes. For a hobby, she wove wheat into patterns, hearts, arrows, chains. Her patience didn't fool me. Always I felt that waiting, the woman outside eager to grasp me with blacksmith's tongs, tear my cord, force into my mouth the seed which sprouts obedience. What did I care for seasons? Yet destiny has a power greater than one girl's reluctance. In short, I was born. This stupid world of sorrow and joy began in the triumphant midwife's hands. And up on the mountain, the gods all lit cigars.
That is Beth Jansen reading from her new collection, The Enchanted House, and it's a pleasure to have you here with us, Beth. Thanks very much.
Thanks for inviting me in, Matt.
Persephone makes a few appearances in this collection.
She does.
What is it about Persephone? What made you think of her? Persephone was, correct me if I'm wrong, Hades captured Persephone, right, and then brought her into the underworld. She became goddess of the underworld.
You are so right.
Okay.
Yeah, she was Demeter's daughter. Demeter is the goddess of the earth and fertility and agriculture and all of that. And Hades came up and kidnapped her and took her down. Persephone took Persephone down into the underworld, and she became queen of the dead. But she was not thrilled about that, I gather. However, due to a bunch of things that happened later, one of those things involving a pomegranate seed, she got to come back up to the upper world, but she had to stay there a third of the year, and she's supposed to be the Greek reason for the seasons, nature cycle, and all of that.
So what was it about her story that made you want to use her as a motif throughout some of your work here?
It's really about her travel to the underworld. The fact that she lives above ground some part of the year and travels to the underworld against her will during the other part of the year. She's a powerful symbol for the journey into the underworld, or the underworld of our consciousness, so to speak, and to the darkness that is in our lives, in a lot of women's lives, a lot of people's lives, and in my life for sure. So she attracted me.
When did you first discover that you liked writing, that this was something that you liked to do?
That's a tough question. I know that I wrote poetry when I was a kid. My parents gave me books of poetry, and my relatives gave me books of poetry when I was a kid, and I just liked to write. I always loved doing that. But I became academically inclined and went through a stream of writing academically, seriously, and not focusing on my creative work. So when I finished my master's and I decided I was done with academia, then it took a little time, and then I started to really focus on my creative writing outside the constraints of logic, so to speak.
And was poetry the form that immediately grabbed you and inspired you?
No, actually I write a lot of fiction, but poetry became the form, I guess, that I most needed to explore, that I was drawn to revise and work through a lot of things in. Because it's very hard to, have a job and also work on one's writing and to work on poetry and fiction simultaneously. So I decided that my poetry would be the focus for a while, and I took poems that I'd been working on for many years and put them together in a collection and started to revise them in relation to each other.
Well, you mentioned sitting down writing poetry. What kinds of doors did that open for you? Because you were talking about exploring the darkness in your own life. What kinds of things did you find yourself exploring as you started to sit down to write?
I was very attracted to unconscious writing, stream of consciousness writing, because it allowed it allowed me to incorporate very simple systems that interested me. So that's when Persephone came in, and because I did 2 literature degrees, excuse me. So there are a lot of allusions in my work that have to do with things that I studied and things that were just sort of moving around in me. So whatever symbol systems attracted me, I found out by doing stream of consciousness writing. I don't know if you're familiar with Natalie Goldberg, has this very famous book called Writing Down the Bones that talks about basically writing as a form of spiritual practice in which you let go of logic and so on. And this allowed, I think, a lot of darkness or difficult things to come out that I would not sit down and think, okay, now I'm going to write about this. But through this kind of practice, because practice in writing, the person who's doing this form becomes less afraid of what's in his or her own mind.
Mm-hmm.
And some really interesting things came out. And I don't mean factual things. I mean just clusters of symbol and narratives that were new or exciting to me. I fashioned them into poems and then just kept revising them without understanding them initially. But as I went through the process of fashioning the poems into poems and the book into a book, which, by the way, the first poems in this book were written in 1995, so, about 10-year book. Then I began, by actually going through that process, to understand myself a lot better and what the poems meant. I went on faith that the poems had meaning and that I would discover what they were as I revised them, as I polished them, as I pared things down. And when I went through the mentorship program with Joe, getting his feedback and hearing his feedback about what he saw was there, I could let go of extraneous parts and have them become more coherent.
Was it a positive experience for you, kind of digging deep and realizing that you were exploring these things in your life?
I think deeply so, yes. It was really satisfying and exhilarating. Sometimes I wrote a poem entitled Transformations, for example. I wrote it, I was exhilarated, I was very excited, and I was also quite frightened. But over time, the fear falls away, and there's still that excitement that I have created something, because it's not something I'm doing for therapy, and yet it is a therapeutic process to take what's inside and express it and fashion it into something meaningful and, to me, sometimes beautiful, because things fit together in the way that I want them to. Then I feel really excited, and I feel that in itself is a cathartic process.
Sure. So what kinds of things from your life have you explored in the poetry in the Enchanted House?
Well, the book is split. The house is the book is divided into 4 sections. So the first section has to do with themes from childhood. The other sections move through young adulthood, and the third and fourth section I wouldn't pin down to a particular time in my life. The basic theme in the book is some confinement, imprisonment, or violence. Pushing against that is this vital force of expansion. The book really does move from imprisonment towards freedom, and there are various types of various attempts at escape or breaking out of confinement.
And what is the Enchanted House?
The poem The Enchanted House suddenly appeared one day, and enchantment in that poem was not a positive thing, because in that poem the people who are living in that enchanted house find it, the house has a personality, and it's a sterile and confining place, so they escape. So that poem became pivotal for me in my work, and at some point I knew that the book should be called The Enchanted House, and different forms of enchantment show up in different sections of the book. So as I worked through it, I thought, the house is the body, the house is the mind or the psyche, with the basement being the unconscious, and the main floor being the conscious, and all. You can tell, I say literature. Okay, but
you have a literature degree. I
know, but it's fun. It's fun to have that sort of just kicking around in my mind. And the house is also a house because, let's face it. If you look at statistics, a lot of violence against women takes place in houses, and they can be really powerful repositories of memory. And I think that is something that I discovered through the writing of the book. So although the central poem is about a couple, leaving a house, you could think about a couple in terms of a married couple or a romantic couple leaving some house of memory or house of parent or house of even societal constraints, because that house in the Enchanted House is so pristine. It used to have, it has pastel, which the characters used to like, and it has stainless steel, but they begin to find this idea of beauty incredibly restrictive.
Speaking with Charlottetown writer Beth Jansen, who has a new collection, The Enchanted House. And Beth, if you wouldn't mind, would you read one more poem for us before you go?
Sure, that'd be great. This poem is called Three Women, and I wrote it in the late 90s. Yeah, that's right. And it's later in the book, and it's it's a positive poem about movement. The last stanza talks about being burned clean of history, which is, I think, a lot of us would love that at some point in our lives. And I think we all experience it at some major freeing moments in our lives. Mm-hmm. So it's good to end with an up place. This is called Three Women. Three women at a table. One wears silk, another wears red, the third smokes too much. The silk one has a ring, the red one sings, but only when the birds sleep. The smoke one burns, especially a book from her father's library. She burns that. Their laughter whistles through the bones of buildings, through the nameless holes and abandoned nests. Three women laughing, that is powerful. In a streetcar stall, men grip their umbrellas. In the park, earth mumbles, shifts down old graves. And I walk forward, burned clean of history, not knowing three women have cleared this fresh road.
Three Women, a poem from Beth Jansen's collection, The Enchanted House, and it's been a real pleasure talking with you today, Beth. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me in. It's been great.
And we have a copy of Beth's book to give away. We're going to give it away to the fourth caller right now, to 629-6461. 629-6461. Fourth caller wins a copy of Beth Jansen's The Enchanted House.